3 major exchanges stopped accepting the same currency in 24 hours. Not limiting withdrawals, not pausing trading, refusing to take it. The last time this pattern showed up outside crypto, entire economies stopped functioning within 72 hours. If you were watching the charts, you saw volatility. If you were watching the transactions, you saw something else. The first stage of a collapse. November 1923. A Berlin baker named Frau Weber accepts paper marks for bread at 9 in the morning. By 11, she stops making change. By 2 in the afternoon, she has converted her entire cash box into flour sacks and shuttered her shop on Kantstrasse. She didn't wait for the Reichsbank. She didn't read a policy announcement. She watched 3 customers pay with progressively larger bundles for the same loaf of rye bread, and she recognized the pattern. The Weimar mark didn't collapse around her. She rejected it first. The same 3-stage sequence, 72 hours, Berlin, Buenos Aires, Harare, Caracas. And now, possibly, in the transaction logs you check every morning. What Frau Weber saw in those bundles, the same thing you might be seeing right now. The behavior that ended Frau Weber's shop appeared in 4 separate collapses across 95 years. Weimar Germany, October to November 1923. Argentina, December 2001. Zimbabwe, November 2008. Venezuela, August 2018. Each followed a 3-stage sequence: payment delay, denomination rejection, conversion panic. From first refusal to total velocity collapse, 72 hours. The causes were different: hyperinflation in Weimar, capital controls in Argentina, monetary policy failures in Zimbabwe and Venezuela. The behavioral pattern was identical: money functions only when accepted. When Weber stopped making change at 11, when she refused a bundle 3 hours after accepting a smaller one, she didn't change the money supply, she withdrew acceptance. The currency supply hadn't changed, her behavior had. The mechanism operates through observable refusal. A merchant delays closing a transaction. Prices aren't quoted. Cash register stays open longer than usual. The customer notices. The next customer notices the first customer noticing. Then denomination rejection. Only bundles accepted, coins refused, small notes worthless. The rejection spreads faster than any policy announcement could travel. Each merchant who refuses signals to the next that the window is closing. When the 3rd stage hits, immediate conversion into anything non-monetary, the cascade is complete. Why does the same sequence emerge in economies with nothing in common except human merchants watching other human merchants? The mechanism isn't monetary, it's informational. Every merchant operates inside an observation radius. Weber could see 2 shops from her counter on Kantstrasse, the butcher and the tobacconist. In July 1923, when prices rose weekly, her radius gave her days of warning. She watched the butcher adjust his prices on Monday, considered it Tuesday, changed her own on Wednesday. By November, the same observation radius gave her hours. The butcher closed at 10 in the morning. The tobacconist stopped making change by noon. Weber calculated, if 2 merchants within eyesight have stopped accepting marks, the wholesaler will stop by evening. She didn't need the macro data. She needed the micro signal, observable behavior change within her peer network. This is why the cascade compresses, not because the currency fails faster, but because observation density increases. In July, merchants adjusted weekly. By November, they could see refusals happening in real time. Each refusal shortens the decision window for the next merchant. The math is simple. If your observation cycle is 7 days, the cascade takes weeks. If your observation cycle is 3 hours, because you can see 2 other merchants from your counter, the cascade takes 72 hours. The speed of collapse equals the speed of observation, not the speed of printing. Weber's July taught her to read the bundles. Her November taught her to act. 6 months before the cigar box moment, she watched the same pattern unfold slowly. Customers who paid with 10 bills in June brought 20 in July. By August, they brought 50. The bundles grew across weeks, not hours. She adapted. raised prices every Monday, changed the chalkboard twice a week, kept accepting marks because the wholesaler still accepted them. The system bent, it didn't break. What changed between July and November wasn't the mechanism, it was the speed. The same 3 customers, the same bundle escalation, the same rye loaf. But the compression, from weeks to 5 hours, meant the adaptation window disappeared. In July, she had time to raise prices. In November, by the time she could recalculate, the butcher next door had already closed. This is what separates the 4 collapses from ordinary inflation. Inflation gives merchants time to adapt. The 72-hour cascade doesn't. The window between observing the signal and acting on it shrinks until observation and action become simultaneous. Weber's flour conversion wasn't panic. It was the rational endpoint of a shrinking observation window. The same rationality that let her adapt in July forced her to close in November. Wednesday, December 19, 2001. Argentine banks announce withdrawal limits, 250 pesos per week. Thursday morning. Merchants across Buenos Aires stop accepting checks, not because checks bounced, because the merchant behind the counter watched the customer before walk away when told there was a limit. One failed transaction visible to the next customer in line. Friday afternoon. Recoleta supermarkets refuse credit cards. The terminals work, the credit exists, but the merchant knows the bank won't honor the transaction by the time it clears. The transaction window, the gap between sale and settlement, has become the vulnerability. Saturday, December 22. Fuel stations demand US dollars only. 3 days from functioning peso to foreign currency-only economy. Not through government decree, through merchant observation. The Argentine cascade operated through a different trigger than Weimar. Capital controls, not hyperinflation. The government intervened first. But the behavioral sequence compressed into the same 72 hours. The merchants of Buenos Aires didn't know about Frau Weber. They didn't study Weimar economics. They watched the customer in front of them get refused service, and they made the same calculation she made 80 years earlier. The pattern doesn't require knowledge of the pattern. It requires observation of peer behavior. Zimbabwe, November 2008. No capital controls, no bank closures, no government trigger at all. Thursday morning, November 13th, Eastgate District, Harare. Merchants open at 8. By 10, they stop accepting Z10 million notes. Not because the note is worthless on paper, because counting takes longer than the customer's purchase. The denomination had become friction. Friday, November 14th. Fuel stations post new signs. US dollars only. South African rand accepted. Zimbabwe dollar, any denomination, refused. The attendants don't coordinate, they watch each other. One station switches, the next follows within an hour. Saturday afternoon, November 15th. Eastgate shops closed or accepting only foreign currency. 72 hours. No policy change triggered it. No emergency decree preceded it. The central bank made no announcement. The Zimbabwe cascade strips the mechanism to its behavioral core. No government action, no bank failure. Just merchants watching merchants refuse what they're still holding. The fuel station attendant who marked his pump on Thursday didn't cause the grocer to close on Saturday. He signaled, and the signal propagated through observation faster than any institutional response could. Different country, different decade, different government. Same observation radius, same 72 hours. The variable isn't the currency, it's the observation infrastructure. In Weimar, merchants observed through physical proximity. Weber saw the butcher close from her counter. Information traveled at walking speed, across a street, down a block. In Argentina, observation moved through payment networks. A bounced check told the next merchant in line that the system was failing. Information traveled at transaction speed, one customer at a time, across a city in hours. In Zimbabwe, the signal traveled through visible signage. One fuel station's new placard, foreign currency only, was readable from 200 meters. Information traveled at line-of-sight speed. Each upgrade in observation infrastructure compressed the cascade. Walking speed, weeks to 72 hours. Transaction speed, 72 hours flat. Line of sight speed, 72 hours with faster internal compression. Eastgate locked up in 48. Venezuela, August 2018, showed the next step. Digital point-of-sale terminals linked merchants across Caracas into a single observation network. Monday, 4-hour delays on POS terminals. Tuesday, debit cards refused. Wednesday, cash bolivars rejected. Only dollars or Zelle accepted. 3 days, digital observation infrastructure. The same sequence, faster. The pattern doesn't require a failing state. Cryptocurrency markets, May 2022. Terra ecosystem. The UST stablecoin pegs to the dollar through an algorithmic mechanism, not through reserves, not through a central bank, but through code. Thursday, May 9th. UST depegs. Anchor protocol, the system processing most UST transactions, shows delays. Not failures, delays. The digital equivalent of a cash register staying open too long. Stage 1. Visible to anyone watching the network. Friday, May 10th. Binance suspends UST deposits. Coinbase follows. FTX follows. 3 exchanges refusing to accept the denomination into their systems within 24 hours. Not closing trading, refusing deposits. The digital equivalent of bundles only, no small notes. Stage 2. 3 major platforms signaling simultaneously. Stage 3 never completed. The conversion panic dispersed into the broader crypto market. Bitcoin absorbed the exit, Ethereum absorbed it, other stablecoins absorbed it. The behavioral trigger fired, but the panic found alternative containers before it could compress into a complete collapse. 2 stages visible, 3rd stage missing. Partial activation in a $30 trillion market. The difference between Terra and Weimar is the container. Frau Weber's flour conversion happened inside a closed national economy. When she rejected marks, there were limited alternatives: flour, foreign currency, physical goods. The conversion panic had nowhere to disperse. Every merchant converting simultaneously created total velocity collapse. Argentina's Corralito happened inside capital controls. The exits were blocked by government decree, but the merchants found them anyway. Dollars, physical cash, informal exchange networks. Zimbabwe happened inside a collapsing state with porous borders. South African rand flowed in as the Zimbabwe dollar flowed out. Terra happened inside a $30 trillion market with unlimited exit doors. The behavioral sequence activated, but stage 3 dispersed across hundreds of alternative instruments instead of compressing into a single currency collapse. The pattern is the same. The container determines whether stage 3 completes or dissipates. A national currency inside a closed economy, the container holds. The cascade completes. 72 hours. A digital token inside an open market, the container leaks. Stage 3 finds alternatives. The cascade partially activates but doesn't reach total velocity collapse. The question for any currency, fiat or digital, is not whether the behavioral triggers will fire. They always do. The question is whether the container holds when they do. Go back to Weber's counter, the cigar box, the bundles growing every hour. She didn't need inflation statistics. She needed 3 customers. The Eastgate fuel attendant didn't need a government report. He needed to see the station across the road switch its sign. The Binance risk team didn't need a Federal Reserve announcement. They needed to see anchor protocol transaction delays. The pattern requires one condition: observable velocity collapse in peer transactions. The trigger isn't economic data, it's behavioral observation within your network. The infrastructure changes: countertops, payment terminals, blockchain explorers. The behavior doesn't. You watch what the person next to you accepts. Then you decide what you will accept. The decision propagates at the speed your observation infrastructure allows. In 1923, that speed was walking pace across Kantstrasse. In 2022, it was milliseconds across a global network. The 72-hour window is compressing. It has been compressing for 100 years. You now understand the 72-hour pattern. 3 stages that repeated across a Berlin bakery, a Buenos Aires fuel station, a Harare market, and a Caracas payment terminal. The mechanism doesn't change. The observation speed does. Stage 1 is always visible before Stage 2 becomes irreversible. The exchange that pauses deposits. The payment terminal that delays settlement. The merchant who stops quoting prices. These are not random technical glitches. They are the opening moves of a behavioral cascade that has completed 4 times in 100 years and partially activated in the largest financial market ever built. This channel exists because these mechanisms operate whether you recognize them or not. Next video, the institutional hoarding sequence. What central banks buy in the 6 months before they announce a crisis. Same forensic method, same question. Can you see Stage 1 before Stage 3 completes? Subscribe so the next pattern doesn't finish before you see it start. We reconstruct what happened. You decide what it means for what's happening now.